What was your objective there?
Just to bring down the overall anxiety level of the protesters. I mean, in my mind, Ottawa residents have seen that type of police presence probably on a regular basis at large-scale events, but a lot of these people that traveled to Ottawa have likely never been here before and likely never participated in an event of this magnitude. So I just wanted everyone to understand that when you have a massive crowd such as this come to the National Capital Region for a large event, it's normal to have multiple police agencies involved. It's normal to have specialized units moving around in more tactical looking clothing, and it's normal to have snipers on rooftops, because that was something that a lot of people were really panicked about. They were nervous about the presence of snipers being on the roof. And that being my old job, I was able to speak to people and keep them calm. Be like, it's totally normal. Don't panic. That's what happens here all the time.
And if you could go put up, please, HRF 401289. And it's page 11 of the document, I believe. Sorry. Can you just scroll back a bit? No, more. Okay, I scroll up then, sorry about that. No, the other way, please. Yeah, keep going, please. More. This, keep going, please. This is an affidavit that you swore in connection with the proceedings, the class action commenced by Sexy Lee.
Yes, that's correct.
And you talk about, at paragraph 7 and 8, if you can scroll there, about a complaint from an Ottawa resident about honking through the night.
Yes, that's correct.
And you say you told him that quiet hours from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. had been put in place. What was your understanding of that? Who put that into place?
My understanding is that the truck captains had already put that into place, maybe even the day before, if not that day, the day before. That's what was communicated to myself, and this was the one and only complaint I ever received about it.
And what was your understanding moving through the period of time that the convoy was in Ottawa? Did that change?
Well, there was the injunction came into place as well, which definitely impacted the horn honking, and I would say, in my opinion, it reduced it even further.
And can we go to paragraph 9 of your affidavit? Say there, my primary concern is individuals or groups with potential to deliberately instigate conflict with the Freedom Convoy movement and to discredit the Freedom Convoy. Can you say why that was your concern?
Well, that would go back partially to my concern about a lone wolf or small cell that could potentially try and leverage the large crowd for their own agenda. But I also had concerns because I've done overwatch at a number of protests and counter protests in Ottawa, and I've seen with my own eyes how aggressive groups related to the Antifa movement can be when they are much larger in numbers than the group that they're counter-protesting against, and how aggressive they can be overrunning the police line as well.
So when you were referring to instigators, who were you referring to?
Well, people who would deliberately try to initiate a violent interaction with a Freedom Convoy protester, or maybe even someone who would try to infiltrate the crowd with a racist type flag to try and bring discredit to the Freedom Convoy protest.
And do you recall, and I believe the date was February 8, having a conversation with Constable Wierzbicki about your concern and displeasure with the psychological operation being waged on convoy participants?
Yes, I do.
And what was that about?
So in the initial, I would say close to initial 2 weeks, I thought that Chief Slowly was pretty fair in his remarks regarding the convoy, you know, understanding his position as the chief of police of the city of Ottawa, but I thought that he was pretty unbiased. And then after I think it was a council meeting, or police services board meeting, there was a lot of rhetoric regarding the Freedom Convoy protesters, allegations of being extremists, insurrectionists. I believe even the term domestic terrorism may have been thrown around. And I noticed at that time it also coincided with a lot of that same rhetoric from the legacy media. And you know, and we'd already heard and seen the Prime Minister using similar language. And so I felt that was definitely heightening the anxiety of the overall crowd. The fear that they were going to be labeled such and dealt with as such by law enforcement, because they were under so much pressure from the different levels of government. And there was also, I believe that was right around the same time that there was also, they were being denied access to service some of the portable toilets. So, I mean, you're denying people their basic sanitation needs. And there was also information beginning to circulate about the involvement of CAS, or Children's Aid Society, I believe is what that stands for. And that to me was a clear red flag to me, that if you are deliberately trying to provoke people to take action, if you make them believe that you're going to take their kids away, that's going to elicit a very strong emotional response. And I believe that was deliberately done in order to bully the Freedom Convoy protesters.
And we can put up, please, document HRF 50568. Is this the type of daily security briefing that you would prepare on a day-to-day basis?
I believe there was a mistake. I did not prepare these daily security briefings, like a document.
Yes.
That was another individual. But I mean, these are some of my some of the actions that I took place in and the conversations that I took place in.
And who is Constable Wierzbicki?
He is an OPP liaison officer.
And in this document, you refer to, under February 4, in the first paragraph, to an incident at Confederation Park. And then you refer to an incident involving the new Queen of Canada. And next paragraph down, You were asked about Pat King's involvement in the convoy, and you indicated you had limited knowledge and almost zero contact with him. And if you can scroll further down, please. Next page. There's no next page. Did you also at one time speak to Constable Wierzbicki about a memorandum of understanding that was circulated?
I don't recall speaking to Constable Wierzbicki about that, no.
Did you know about the memorandum of understanding?
Yo, Joey, what's up, man?
Yes, I had heard about it, and I think I may have seen it circulating.
What up,
online
Joey, man? How you doing, man?
ahead of the convoy.
Heard there's good money. Do it,
The
Dick.
first
Follow
time
your
I
heart,
ever
my
actually
man.
read it was just last week.
I think every time you ask me like a complicated question that I don't have the answer,
And
I just say follow your heart,
You
man.
mentioned the
What's good? Yo,
intersection
what's
at
up, man?
Rideau
What's up,
and
Joey? I'm good,
Sussex.
bro.
Did you
Good,
have
man. Hanging
occasion
out.
to go
This
to
is
Rideau and
Canadian
Sussex?
politics, dude.
Yes, I
It's about the
walked
Freedom
through
Convoy.
that intersection
This guy was a
multiple
sniper
times
for Justin Trudeau when he
daily.
resigned
Well, at least
because he didn't want
probably
to
twice a
take
day
the vaccine
when I would
injection.
go out for a foot patrol and
And
when
then
I
he
would come
protested.
back.
And,
The guy, that's his legend
what are
there,
your
looking at the camera with the toque and the brown jacket, he was trampled by a
Well,
horse.
they were primarily made
And
up of
there's a video of it. He's trampled by a
Benoit
horse.
truckers, but then there
The
was
hoof
also,
to his face,
like other witnesses have
And then the
testified,
police
there
dragged
was
him into
also
the
like
a crowd of
Polish
cops,
or Eastern
encircled
European
him, and then no one's ever
contingent.
seen him again.
And I actually encountered
February 2022.
a Cuban Canadian who spoke to me
I'm good,
at
bro. I'm
length
good, man.
about how he felt strongly about being there to support the convoy because he had lived through communism and that Canadians could not give up their freedoms.
And were you there at any time when there was attempts to move vehicles from Rideau and Sussex?
No, I was not.
And what was your impression of the way people were behaving at the intersection?
Well, on weekends they would have a stage and music, and they would have like a nightly dance party on definitely
man.
on the Friday.
Yeah,
and
is
the
that Pepe
Saturday
Heart?
night, typically.
Yeah, man, you gotta follow it.
is
The
what I
koala
recall.
heart. Do it, man. Do it if you love it.
About during the week?
I made a bunch of random YouTube videos mainly just because I love it. With the hope that maybe
There
one
was a
day I
lot
become
of,
famous, but
a lot of different food.
I'm already
tents
famous with you
and
guys here.
barbecues. People
That's-
were,
you guys
were
make
cooking
me
and
famous.
preparing
Did you know
food
that?
in
because of you.
clumps of people.
Now, we heard evidence from Keith Wilson, you know Mr. Wilson,
Yes, I do.
that there were leaks in either the OPS, OPP, or both, because the convoy organizers were aware of police operations before they happened. Did you know about that?
I never had any active duty officers leaking me any sensitive information. I did have a number of police officers, former police officers, former military, that were helping me with some of the different security tasks. And there was, I'm not
Oh, wow,
exactly
crazy
certain
Dick.
of the number, but there was
Yeah, ASMR. I
was
can understand
officers
how
that
a
were
video
on
would make a lot more
leave
sense. I listened to some
for
Tibetan
various
bowl
reasons, whether
ASMR.
it be the mandates or
bowl,
their own
like,
personal
the-
reasons. I
where you
didn't
get,
ask.
like,
It wasn't my
high pitch based on
business.
frequency, like
That
dong,
were also
dong,
helping
dong,
with some
dong.
of the
Crystal balls.
security tasks that I was coordinating.
Okay. And if I can move to a different subject,
You can always put the streams up on
continue
YouTube after
to
you're
have,
done, right? You can download
contact
your
with the
stream and just
DLT?
put it on YouTube.
of the police forces over the entire period?
In general, yes. There might have been
Depends what your goal
there
is.
might have
If
been
you
the
want
odd day where there was
people
no
to revisit it,
communication. I know
or just to see it once. Right?
communication with the Ottawa Police Service liaison teams. Kind of, I recall it reducing near the end. Like especially after the Emergencies Act had been invoked. But from my recollection, the OPP was fairly regularly engaged.
And did you, concerning the OPS, did you have a view on how effective they were being?
Well, I think they were overwhelmed by the size of the convoy. I think that I actually had the young officer that I spoke to that early in the convoy down at Booth and Sir John A. Macdonald. He actually said to me, I can't believe the size of this. Something to this effect. I can't believe the size of this. We're totally unprepared for something this size. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, you guys have to stop listening to the CBC for intelligence. And that was kind of the end of that interaction. But because if you had been paying attention to open source, like any kind of social media, it was obvious that this was a huge event that was about to land in Ottawa. But coming back to how effective they were, I have no complaints about dealing with them, but I don't think it was ever really, I never really felt as though there was any kind of a negotiation taking place. It was just my means to communicate with the police, because we would try and get simple returns from the police liaisons, like something as simple as like, could we possibly get access to this location so we could drop some portable toilets? And we were getting shut down almost all the time. The only time I ever remember having any success with that was after I had expressed my displeasure about the psychological operation that was being conducted when I had that discussion with OPP Where's Becky.
And at one point, did you come to learn that Chief Slowly had asked for 1,800 police officers?
Yes, I did.
And what was your reaction to that?
Well, I anticipated that at the very least he was asking for a large number, because this could be a sustained event and members would obviously need to be cycled out for sustainment. And likely that they were preparing for a mass mobilization.
And did you do anything as a result of hearing that information?
I mean, we had discussions about it. It didn't change what my role was. My task was to just continue trying to keep things as safe as possible.
And were you aware of negotiations that were taking place between the leaders in the convoy and the mayor?
I was made aware of that after the fact.
Okay. And in terms of, did you have any communication with anyone who was involved in the Ambassador Bridge protest?
No, I did not. I believe we've already seen an email that was forwarded to me by Miss Leach during her testimony, and that was the only time I'd ever seen anything from Windsor, and that I didn't even open that until well after the Ottawa convoy had been dismantled.
And what about Coots?
No, sir.
Emerson, Surrey?
None.
Now, at what point do you recall learning that the Emergencies Act was to be invoked?
I believe the day that it was officially announced by the federal government.
Did you hear anything about it prior to that date?
I think there was discussions, people wondering if it would be, and my thought process was that, well, I would not be surprised if it was, because the city had declared a state of emergency, the province had declared one. to me, it would not surprise me in the least if the next logical step was the federal government.
And do you recall, subsequent to the invocation on February 16, holding a press conference?
Yes, I do.
And that was with Mr. Gyges and Mr. Cornell?
That's correct.
Who is Mr. Cornell?
He's one of the members of the steering committee for the group Veterans for Freedom. He's a combat veteran.
And if I can just read you what I understand you said at that press conference, the emergency order clearly states that the protest is allowed to continue if the protest is peaceful. The government is trying to order the police to use force against peaceful protesters. We call on our fellow Canadians to come to Ottawa to exercise their legal right to assembly and protest. The more Canadians that come to Ottawa, the harder it will be for the police to carry out the government's illegal order. Is that something you said?
That's correct.
And did you receive advice as to your interpretation of the emergency order?
Yes. We'd received a briefing from the legal team that based on, I believe it's Justice McLean's ruling, that as long as people did not come to Ottawa to engage in violence, disrupt trade, or block critical infrastructure, we still fell within the confines of a lawful protest.
And did somebody request that you give this press conference, or did you do it on your own initiative?
Well, I was working with the media relations people from early on. I think like you mentioned, that my first press conference that I attended was on February 3rd. And so I did a number of press conference events during my time with the convoy.
And at this point, isn't it fair to say that you believe that enforcement action could come at any time?
Perhaps I was naively hoping that my
I believe in you, bro.
brothers and sisters in law enforcement would see the truth on the ground as opposed to what the government and the media was saying, and that they would take a historic opportunity to stand up for our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
And did you think about, was it a concern to you that you were encouraging people to come into Ottawa where that sort of law enforcement activity might well take place?
No, because at that time, like I said, I still had faith that frontline members would do the right thing.
Now, my understanding is that on February 18, your wife advised you that you were going to be arrested?
Yes, that's correct. She advised me that she had received a text message from one of our neighbors that the news was reporting that the police were looking for me to arrest me.
And if we turn to the document PB/NSC CAN 408924. The second page of the document. This is an RCMP document, and if you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see information collected. Freedom Convoy organizers held a press conference at 13:30 hours. Participants included, and that's blanked out, spoke to the same theme. And you see what it says there about Canadians still being allowed to come to Ottawa with their children to engage in peaceful, lawful protest. Is that what you said at your press conference?
Yeah, I believe that's accurate.
And you'll see the last paragraph there, all three individuals have contravened to Section 5 of the Emergency Measures Regulations by inviting a person to participate in an assembly that may reasonably be expected to lead to a breach of the peace. Now, I can come back. Were you arrested on February 18th?
Yes, I was.
And can you briefly tell the commissioner about that?
Well, after the press conference, and my wife showed me the text message from our neighbor, I left the Lord Elgin Hotel. I walked down to Rideau in Sussex, where I knew that the police action had already begun. Initially, I encountered the Sûreté de Québec. No one would respond to me, so then I realized that there was RCMP, a line of RCMP officers over closer to the Senate, or the old train station. And so I walked over to them. I approached the line. I presented myself, and I said, something to the effect of, I hear that you're looking for me to arrest me. Is that true? And then I was arrested for mischief.
And were you ultimately charged?
No, I was not.
Were your bank accounts frozen?
Yes, they were.
Can you tell the commissioner about that, please?
To my recollection, we realized that our bank accounts were frozen. So 2 different banks and a primary credit card. I realized, I think how I recall it going was that accessing online banking with our primary bank, and it was just like a blank dash where the account balance would normally be. And then my wife confirmed with the other bank, attempted to use the credit card, and it was declined. And my wife spoke to a banking professional, a friend of ours, to ask if, with our accounts frozen, would our mortgage payments and automatic withdrawals still be paid, and we were advised that it would not be. And so I would say roughly a period of 5 to 6 days, we were completely dependent on what cash we had.
And after that, how long were your accounts frozen?
I believe my accounts were unfrozen on the Tuesday, the 22nd or the 23rd of February, after the Emergencies Act had been revoked.
So they were frozen for how many days?
I believe I realized they were frozen on the 17th. And then I think that was the Thursday. I didn't receive any kind of notification about it until I think one bank called me and left a voicemail message on the Saturday. And then it was unfrozen after the Emergencies Act had been revoked.
And were you able to meet your day-to-day expenses during that period?
Well, fortunately, we didn't have a whole pile of expenses that we had to incur during those days, but we had some help from some family.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Those are my questions.
If I may add one thing about the accounts being frozen, I was never notified by the police that my accounts were frozen, contrary to what was said to Parliament by the RCMP when they testified in committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the Ottawa Police Service, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bulford. My name is David Mijakowski. I'm a lawyer for the Ottawa Police Service.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. You talked about your interactions with the PLT, and I gather from reviewing your statement you had many interactions with the PLT. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And they were very helpful?
I think they desired to be, yes.
And you had the sense that they wished they had more ability to negotiate?
Yes, I would say that's accurate. I do recall, you know, when there was attempts to negotiate, occasionally receiving the reply to, like, that wasn't their decision to make.
In your statement you prepared, you have a statement that says Canada Freedom Rights Movement, Daniel Joseph Bulford statement. That's a statement that was prepared for you by the Justice Center's lawyers?
No, sir, I prepared that myself.
And you put that logo on top, or that name on top, Canada Freedom Rights Movement?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you suggest that everyone else do that as well?
No, I did not.
Okay. In that report, you indicate a number of potentially criminal actions involving non-convoy members that you reported to the OPS. And so I see things in that report about bikers, about the new Queen of Canada, false claims that bricks had been ordered in your name, potential instigation, concerns about Canada unity, vandalism of trucks, social media posts made by Mr. Lacasse, a shortage, a sabotage of transport trucks, bikers, and bomb threats, right? Those are all things that you referenced.
That's correct.
And you're a strong supporter, I take it, of law and order.
My dad was a police officer for 38 years. Both of my older brothers were police officers. Obviously, I was, and there's only one of us remaining, but my hometown in Alberta referred to us as the Byzantine Blue Bloods.
And I know from the Ottawa Police Service institutional report that I won't turn up in order to save time, that during the period of the convoy, there were a number of criminal charges laid. In fact, we know, and it's on page 14, that there were 533 of them, according to Schedule C. But what I don't see a single notation of in your statement is where you brought any of those criminal offenses to the attention of the Ottawa Police.
Can you refresh me on the dates that you're referring to?
The dates? Yes. Your statement, I'm not sure when your statement was prepared, but the evidence that we have in the record is that during the period of the Freedom Convoy, so from January 28th to a date in March, there were a total of 533 criminal charges.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't remember if that's laid or people arrested. And so I didn't see anywhere in your statement where you brought information about that criminal activity to the attention of the Ottawa Police.
I have an objection.
Hold on a moment. Yeah.
My friend is misstating the evidence to the witness, and I object to it. On that basis, the evidence is that the vast majority of charges were laid after the fact, and that actually, at least based on the one document and evidence, criminal charges that existed at the time before the invocation were only about 19 of charges laid. So with respect to my friend stating in the OPS document, and I can advise the Commission that after I looked at what they had put together, I asked for disclosure from them with respect to when these charges were laid, and they've decided not to provide that, and they're using a jumbled up statistic. So in my submission, sir, my friend's going to ask the witness about why he didn't include OPS information in his statement that isn't clear. I think he needs to actually put the actual evidence that is before this tribunal before him, and not jumble it up into a fact that these are 500 some odd charges that may or may not have been laid during the time period that he was here, sir.
Okay, well, maybe you can just ask the
I
question
think
without reference to
I think the question was fair, and my friends now used a couple minutes of my time. But there were a lot of charges during the period of the Freedom Convoy. We know that. And I don't see anywhere in your statement where you reference informing the Ottawa Police of the situations leading to those criminal charges.
Well, I often reported to the Ottawa Police, the various police agencies, anything that came to my attention that I believed to be criminal or a public safety concern. And I believe that the majority of those arrests and charges happened during the dismantle operation of the protest, a significant chunk of which I was in custody.
You were in custody as of what date, sir?
February 18th.
Well, the record will speak for itself. And so in your statement, in paragraph 80 of your statement, you say you did everything to cooperate with the police and to maintain public peace and police safety. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
That's correct.
Okay. And so I also note that in the institutional report of the Ottawa Police, that the Communication Center received many emergency calls from businesses to have protesters removed because they weren't wearing a mask, to deal with complaints about being harassed while walking on the street with masks, to complaints of being sexually harassed and threatened. I see as well that questions were asked about OPS's enforcement plans. I see as well that there were noise complaints that were received and requests for charges against the protesters. And I don't see anywhere, sir, in your statement where you reference any of those things.
Well, sir, that's not my job to handle the call volume that the Ottawa Police receives. And there's a lot of allegations that I've heard during testimony at this inquiry that I have no knowledge or have not seen any real evidence of. I'm not suggesting that it's not possible, but people were not calling me to report criminal offenses to the police.
Okay. You've heard the evidence of Councillors McKenney and Fleury,
Yes.
and you heard about what their constituents had to put up with, correct? You heard that evidence? I'm just asking you that question.
Yes, I heard their evidence.
And so either, did you believe what Councillor McKenney and Fleury said? Or did you think the issues they were raising were trivial?
I wouldn't characterize what they were saying as trivial, but again, I've come to the point where I'm not going to believe anything until I see actual evidence of it.
You told me about you clearly respect law and order.
My man, I'm
I take
gonna
it you have a
sign
lot of
off now,
respect
though,
for the
homie.
Canadian court system.
Check out War Campaign on YouTube. They're not
Correct.
war. They don't promote war. They're not violent.
I
It's
sincerely
it's
hope
the
it's
Spartan
still
type
functioning
of.
the way it is intended. Yes.
It's
I am
important that
Spartacus type of
decisions
theory.
the court be
I am
respected.
Danny Bulford.
Yes.
I
And one of
am
the
Tamara
decisions
Lich.
was,
You know.
that the convoy had negatively impacted
I am
residents.
James Bowder.
And
I am
the
Brown Jacket
convoy,
Guy.
Protesters were breaching bylaws. You were aware of that?
Could you specify the bylaws?
Or in what was the movie?
Were
What was
you
it?
aware of that,
300?
sir?
And they're like,
Again, sir.
You,
it's-
sir,
it's
what's your
not
profession?
My profession to enforce
Oh,
bylaws
I'm
in the
a
city of
chef.
Ottawa.
And as
you,
a
sir,
police
what is your
officer,
profession?
you understand that
I am a
disclosing
carpenter.
confidential information is an offense.
and you, I am an ironsmith.
What type of confidential information are
Confidential
you referring
information.
And then he looks back at his, like, all his 300 men. He's like, "Men, what is your profession?"
For the RCMP,
Ahoo!
correct?
to?
Ahoo!
That's correct.
Ahoo!
You mean like as it relates to
And
information
that
I
army
learned during my time
becomes
as a
like
police
this
officer.
army. They don't even fight. The armor's like,
No, I'm just asking you the question
All right.
generally, that the disclosure of confidential
Such a good scene.
information is an offense.
it's like the Spartacus
Correct.
scene, right? It's like
While
the
if a
2000s
serving police
I am
officer
Spartacus.
discloses information, that
Anyways.
is an offense, correct?
Thanks, man. I'm gonna sign off, buddy. I'm
Like,
sign
under
off.
if I was to disclose something confidential as
Thank
a
you, Baron.
current-
Thank
as
you,
an active serving police officer,
Joey,
that would be an
Dick,
offense under the
Edward
RCMP Code of
Lurkers.
Conduct.
Right.
Who else
I would
was
agree
here?
with
What's
that,
his
yes.
name?
And
Bum.
same thing would apply to a municipal police
Another
officer
person was
who
also here.
discloses information they had as a police officer.
Let's read somebody, maybe.
I'm not entirely certain. I would assume you're probably accurate, but I didn't fall under the Police Services Act.
Okay, sure. It would be breach of confidence if that's of assistance. But it can also potentially be a criminal offense as well, correct?
Robbie
Breach of
rat poison?
trust.
Network error? What?
Yeah, probably.
And being a person who
Let's raid
supports
Robbie Rat.
law and order, you
do
would
it.
not condone that kind of thing, would you? You wouldn't want police officers to be breaching their oaths and providing confidential information to members of the convoy, would you?
No.
And so Mr. Wilson, in his witness statement,
Robbie Rat
talks about
poison.
people working at the Swiss Hotel. That was where you were?
That's correct.
And so he said there were former law enforcement officers, they had radios, maps. Many of these ex-service personnel were connected and brought in
Okay,
intel.
yeah, it's gonna work. Okay, thank you.
Wilson
You're
is
the best.
unaware of the sources, but the Freedom Convoy was receiving leaked information from law enforcement.
Right.
I just want to be clear, you never became aware of any leaked information from
Sorry
Ottawa
about that. Sorry about that.
police
I-
service officers, did you?
I will be 100% clear. At no time did I receive sensitive information from an active duty Ottawa police officer.
And you never received confidential information from an Ottawa police officer, did you?
No.
Okay. And Mr. Wilson never told you who these people were.
No.
And you were very involved in the security, the response and the incident command that was going on at that hotel, correct?
That's correct.
So one would expect that you would know if there was leaked confidential information, correct?
Yes, I expect I would.
And you're not suggesting, obviously, that if such a thing had occurred, that the Ottawa Police Service would condone that kind of thing, correct?
I think it's fair to say that the Ottawa Police would not condone that.
Right. And one of the things you reference in your statement at paragraph 80 is you accuse the police leadership, and I'm just going to quote you, of, quote, knowingly attempting to instigate a strong emotional reaction from convoy participants by using inflamed rhetoric and threatening the involvement of Child Protective Services.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, I wonder if I could ask you please to call up HRF 401553. And if we go to page 22, please. At paragraph 103. Thank you. And I'll just read that sentence, the first sentence, sir. I also advised him, this is from your statement, correct?
That's correct.
I also advised him of my belief that our own government was committing crimes against humanity, allowing thousands of Canadians to die because they've been denied life-saving treatment, and others have been disabled or have died from the vaccine, something a homicide detective may want to consider. And would you agree with me that that would be an example of inflammatory rhetoric attempting to instigate a strong emotional response?
I don't think it's an example of inflammatory rhetoric. I think it's absolutely factually true.
Okay.
And that I was trying to elicit a response from Detective Benson.
Okay.
Because he, as a homicide detective, should be investigating something of that nature.